dear friend was the business owner there, and it was a two ladies partnership, one Indian and one Qatari.
How much of the concepts of intuition, visualization do you use your projects?
When we are doing the brief, we combine this compassionate inquiry and exploration with scientific data and research.
How do you balance artistic expression with the practical aspects of running a successful in terms of your business?
If you can use it as a wellness plus sustainable, I think it works in the long term.
One advice that you want to give it aspiring architects or people who are transitioning from architect to a interior design field. Hi everyone, I'm Mohsin Ahmed. Welcome to Boss Talks. Transformative conversations meet actionable insights. In each episode, we have conversations on the intersections of modern leadership, exploring how spirituality shapes decision making, how sustainability drives innovation, how technology transforms business, and how emotional intelligence powers lasting success. This is where wisdom meets purpose. Today, we have with us a multifaceted visionary in the world of design and architecture, Nima VN, founder and design director of N7 Design and Trading in Qatar and NNI Associates in India. Nima brings over 7 years of transformative leadership to the architectural landscape, masterfully blending emotional intelligence with innovative design, spanning across luxury, residential, hospitality, and commercial spaces throughout India and the Middle East. What makes Nima's approach truly exceptional is her commitment to creating spaces that don't just look beautiful but tell compelling stories and enhance user experience. Her forward-thinking integration of AI and technology into architecture, coupled with a passionate dedication to sustainability, has established her as a thought leader in design thinking and the future of built environment. From founding NNI Associates in 2017 to expanding her visionary approach with N7 Design and Trading in Qatar, Nima exemplifies what it means to build a global design philosophy that respects both innovation and human connection. Today, we will explore the intersection of creativity, leadership, technology, advancement in the world of design. Hi Nima.
Hi Mahsina, how are you? And I'm so glad to be here. It's a pleasure, and the introduction was quite humbling.
Thank you so much for joining in, and we are looking forward to learn a lot from you in terms of your thought process of design and building understanding the human mindset in the usability of it. So Nima, your journey in design has been quite diverse, spanning luxury, residential, hospitality, commercial institutions. What initially drew you to architecture and then you moved into design?
Yeah, so from my childhood itself, construction was a very familiar term for me. So my extended family was involved in a lot of construction. So I was around the site when my house was being built. I was there on the site, and I was quite fascinated with how the buildings come out, the whole process. I was always interested into it. And when the time came for me to actually choose a course, I was very sure that I don't want a pure science subject or a pure art subject. So something in between would what works for me. So architecture became quite an obvious choice there. So I graduated from NIT Calicut. I did my BArch there, and then went on to work for architectural firms where we gained experience in a commercial, hospitality, and multi-residential projects. Then I took a small break once I had my kids. They are just 15 months apart, and then I realized that I want to be more present, and flexible timing is something that I'm looking forward for. So the pursuit of finding a flexible work environment led me to explore interior design and interior architecture. And thankfully, at that time, there was a major shift, because when I was graduating, if you see, architecture and interior design was like two separate departments in most of the firms. So architecture did most of the part, and then interior design was more about decoration, more cosmetic. So that was not the main engaging part for me. But a decade later, things started shifting. There was a lot of relevance for interior architecture, where you have a shell and then, you apply the same principles of architecture, integrate services within the design. So your lights, your AC, it doesn't, come out on you. It's part of design, either concealed or, it remains, it's more seamless with the whole design process. Even carving out volumes, the principles that we use in architecture became more relevant in interiors, and people started asking for more. People are, anyway, we are all spending so much of time in the interiors. So the relevance that it received, the market, that kind of, made me, enjoy the whole process, because the training was again in architecture, so we could use in a more creative way. And the other thing about interiors that I found is that, the realization time is less compared to architecture. So when you have to do on your own, you have to see your portfolio, right? So the turnaround time is much quicker for interiors. So as a small group or as a person, it is much easier to start off in interiors than compared to architecture, where we have different disciplines together. So I started enjoying the whole process, and I had to learn from the scratch, because I had not previously worked in an interior design firm. So it was all figuring out, and I think I really enjoyed that path as well. And when I moved to Qatar, I got few inquiries, and they wanted to create Parisian interiors. They wanted an Arizona touch, in the desert, even Islamic architecture. So for me, I know the research is always a very interesting part of my job. It made me hooked on, so I had a lot to learn. So that was a stimulation I was looking for. Then, we grew organic.
Please tell us something from your design aspect that you have gone ahead and designed, and that is very close to your heart, in terms of, it probably evoked memories of your childhood, or, something that really created that emotional as well as, the fulfillment that you were looking for.
Most of the project, it's dear to us because it's kind of our baby. But since you were mentioning about a childhood, I think I'll refer to one of our projects. It's Queen's Beauty Spa and Saloon that we did in Qatar. So we wanted to have a narrative for the whole space. So the whole design vocabulary is based on that narrative. So that was the idea we started off with. It is dear to me just because, not only because of the concept, a dear friend was the business owner there, and it was a two ladies partnership, one Indian and one Qatari, both amazing individuals. So it was everything coming together, like you have a very interesting client, you are given the free hand. So when I delved into like what should be the inspiration for this space, it really took me back to the time when I was small, and in our time, the makeup, it was not so exquisite that we have right now. It was more simpler, but we have this perfume bottles which used to be gifted to each other, which is very interesting in shape, and nice colors, and very interesting. When you have light on them, it has a very interesting pattern that stood with me as a memory. And then I wanted to have a narrative that is relatable to a client who comes in a skirt as well as in an abaya. So we wanted to have a commonality in that narrative. So I think I talked to few of my friends from different backgrounds, and I understood that playing dress up is something common to all of us. It's something we all relate to, and the whole process, it's not that we don't know whether you look beautiful or not, but the entire the unboxing and the beautiful colors, it creates a lot of excitement in most of us. So that became the narrative. We use the playful cutouts, volumes, the patterns usually see in a perfume as the interior. And at that time, using pink was not that cool, but we thought, we want to be unapologetically feminine, and we are going all board. I told the client, a lot of people might say, isn't it childish to add, pink? And, I convinced them, educated them that, there is a thin line between being childish and, having a tasteful design with the same playfulness.
Yeah, absolutely. Because, with Barbie coming in, I think pink has become the new trend.
Yeah, but it was before that. So,
Yes.
everybody was a bit skeptical. Should we go this pink, And one more thing that interesting about this project is that, we try to use the existing partitions a lot. So, the HVAC relocation is minimum. We don't, more sustainable, cheaper for the client, less turnaround time. And then we utilize the principles of architecture, wherein, both the entries, we made it like it's we utilize the space, which is a very limited small space, and then suddenly you enter into a huge volume. So this is something we use in architecture for plazas. We enter from a small alley into a big plaza, and suddenly there is an awe. So the same principles we try to bring in the whole journey. So it's more, there's a lot of emotion involved. And when I went with few of my friends, and just to see, and the moment they entered and suddenly they saw, you could see the awe and the emotion.
The wow factor.
Yeah, and it happens in a very visceral level, because the body reacts when you are going from a small, we have a relation with the space and the height we have. It can evoke different emotions. So it was very interesting to see that kind of reaction.
So tell me one thing, you spoke about sustainability. In today's architectural, concepts and design concept, how much are people open in terms of sustainability, and how much does it mark up the pricing for that matter?
Okay, so as a studio, one of the North Stars that we look into is curiosity drives us, craft enables us, and consciousness grounds us. So when you talk about consciousness, it's a very simple thing. It is to empathize with the client, responsible to the community, and be kinder to your planet. So for us, it's very integral to the whole core of our practice. But we don't believe in preaching and, being very pushy about it. We want to change the mindset rather than just for the sake of doing a we did so and so. It has to be a more organic between two individuals or two organizations. So to answer your first question, whether people are on board, so we find our corporate clients to be more aligned with us in this. Even a small bit, they want to come on board, like propose to us what we can do within the limitation of cost and convenience. They are on board, and we are quite optimistic that things are evolving. And now we have a lot of brands catering to especially workplaces where we have fabrics, furniture, flooring, which are very sustainable materials. There is wellness in it. So we are seeing a lot of positive change. If you ask me what we practice, we follow a 3-step process for this. First is we have an engagement and a dialogue, initiate a conversation. Okay, so we are doing this project. So how can we do it responsibly? We try not to push sustainable because it looks like, it's like a heavy word sometimes to a layman, So they think, I have enough in my plate. Why do I have to add more?
Also, they feel it's expensive. When you think sustainable, they feel
true.
Concept.
So we try to be more responsible, and we try to see how it comes. So once we discuss our thoughts on the whole thing, the second step is, so either the client would be on board, then we try to understand commonalities and work out a solution that is good for this project within the time and the budget. And if the client is not very keen on the whole thing, we try to use the power of one. We tell them, okay, we don't want to be pushy or preachy to you, but can we have at least one element, one aspect in the plan, in the material? Let's not do this. Let's try it out. Something that is not going to break your bank, something. So we try to use the power so that they see the benefit of you using it. So for us, we try to have a very seamless collaborative process where everybody is on. So I think that makes the whole process, more smooth, and finally we have a better product, I believe. And the third step is, where we try to highlight the ROI and the wellness factor. Thankfully, most of the sustainable products are also having a lot of wellness and promotes well-being, and they're made of organic, or they are very consciously made products. So we can highlight. So we try to highlight the wellness and the ROI. This maybe not the first year. By the 5th year, you're really making a difference. So we try to highlight so that they don't feel like they are engaging with one more added responsibility. And then so this is our process. And if you're asking about the new trends, what we are seeing is we can I think there will be a lot of adaptive reuse, like existing structures will be converted in a big way. That's the best way we can actually reduce the carbon print. And the second is with AI and technology coming in a changing and revolutionizing the whole way we are doing things, I think we will have more data on the resource allocation. Like, can have real-time apps which will say, like, see, this this resource is utilized, this is not utilized. So there is less wastage, there's more energy efficiency, whether it be light, HVAC. So technology can help us to reduce the wastage as well as increase efficiency. And for an interior designer, I think where we can really play another role is specifying the sustainable material, whether it's fabric, whether it's the flooring, low VOC paint. So it's, if you can use it as a wellness plus sustainable, I think it works in the long term. And I mean, right now it's not a preference good to have for us, it's something we all need to have.
The concept is about demand and supply, right? So the more people will demand being on the sustainable side of it, the more the cost will reduce, I would think, because the demand is not quite so high. That is the reason why mass production is not there and the cost is high. So that's absolutely rightly put. So your understanding of the client and you pushing just one thing, or you making them understand just one thing, is a step forward to taking on sustainability as a part of construction, as a part of architecture and design. So amazing. Nima, can you tell us one thing? You spoke about AI. Can you tell us 5 AI concepts that can be utilized in the construction phase or in the design phase of a architectural, building, or any kind of concept, say a commercial space as well? So 5 things which is a must in today's day and world, which will make people's life easier.
So when we talked about sustainability, we spoke about the adaptive reuse. So how can we utilize better, an existing structure for a new purpose or a new function? So AI combined with other technology can actually give you a very detailed report on an existing structure, how safe the structure is, what it can be used for. So AI can really change that part and give us more insights into what a building can, function as. So I think that is something we are all looking forward to, how they're going to integrate it in the workflow. So I think research is happening in bits and pieces in everywhere, like a survey and BIM and all introduced, but we are yet to have a very smooth workflow. So we are in the process, I believe. And the second would be for coming up with mood boards and rendering. The client can get an idea on, we as architects and designers, we spend a lot of time getting the renderings and going to multiple options. Actually, it can reduce our time for presentations, and we can actually focus on our real work. Finally, presentation is all about communication and rather than the design. And the third thing is, I would say, for the productivity as well as reducing waste, you can have a better project management, and you can between different stakeholders, whether it's a vendor, subcontractor. So AI can help that be, you don't have to put everything in an Excel sheet. If you have something that gets automated, these are the purchase vendors, all these 100 documents can get reduced into one, and our time is also saved, and it is happening automatically. So that can help in the construction phase as well. And, even the client experiencing the design. So you can literally feel the space with VR staging, and, we can even have the plan drawn out nowadays. The technology is so advanced. So they're not confused. So this kind of reduces the need for any breakage or later afterthoughts. So that is one thing. And the last thing is, it can help run a business, has got different parts. So so if you have a billable hour, directly go to your finance guy, what needs to go to an HR guy can go to. So it can be all seamless. And as they say, one person can have $1 billion company because you have so many tools to help you out.
So Nima, I wanted actually that question that I asked you. I wanted you to tell 5 AI or technological uses that we can use in a say a concept. Say what are the things that can be used, like about the 5 things that a person can utilize in say I'm building a house. Okay, what are the things that I can utilize, the technological advancement that I can utilize in my house in today's day, and what are the innovations that are there which will make my life living in this house easier?
So you are suggesting, like, once you start living, regarding the automation, one is a security system that can, with a timer. So if you have a big house and everything the doors are closed at the right time. You can program it in different ways. So when you are there, when you are not there. So the security is one. And the second is automation. Like when it's hot or cold, you can have your AC on or the heater on, or, control the temperature, have the right temperature when you arrive at your home. And the third is, smart solution, whether it's curtains, blinds, or, any of your appliances that you use in a house. You can actually, nowadays we have a lot of cooking utensils that can be programmed with your phone. So you can have a central control automation system wherein you can, in the morning I can program all of it. And then by the end of the day, the robot is cleaning my house, one is cooking for me, and, I'm ready to relax. So that is the three things I would say: security, automation, and the temperature.
Wow. So you're telling, how soon can we hire robots to do our work? I think real time, as in a real, concept of a robot. Living,
Yes.
we
So
are doing all robotic equipments, but
Yes.
in terms of a, figuring.
Yes, so actually there are prototypes, successful running prototypes. Your typical friend at home who can watch you monitor a kid, you can actually set boundaries, and the kid, once the kid crosses that boundary, we are intimated that the boundaries breached, like the military movies you see, like for a toddler we can have that. We can have cleaning done, we can have all our appointments scheduled. You have a dentist appointment, you just key like I want this, they will check the appointment, time for you to put gas in your everyday life can be done by this robot. And I have seen few working prototypes from a friend who's working in the technology. Right now all the efforts are making it more accessible, more where it can be mass produced, and it can be bought affordable, made affordable by everybody. So even when we are speaking, all this different technology in one robot are individually tested and tried. So I think we can see it.
How soon do you think we
That's a bit difficult
robotic every
because it
house?
involves a lot of business, different countries,
Yeah.
the chip, and and the whole thing is happening. So it has got an impact on it. So I think quite soon. And so even I tell my kids, earlier we used to say, you should have a good job, so now I tell my kids, you want a really good robot who can, do everything for you, you have to get a good career,
Absolutely true. Absolutely. So, tell me one thing, Nima, design is not just about aesthetics, right? It's about understanding human emotions. And you are someone who is going ahead and combining human emotions and experiences with the kind of, design concepts that you're going ahead with. So, how did you first realize this? That, you are drawn, like you said, from a very early on, you knew that, you like the understanding of architecture. So, how did you understood that this is what I want to do, connecting human emotions with the kind of concepts that I'm designing?
When I started practicing, I realized that what makes me happy is a happy client and my payment on time. These are the integral factors. So I think that is the first priority for us. So how do you make somebody happy? You have to exceed their expectation, right? So how do you do that? So you can do it only if you know what is their preferences, what is their long-term goal, what is their short-term goal, what is the legacy they are planning for that building. So it's like when you know all this information, it automatically gets detailed in your drawing, and then they have that benefit when they are living in that space. So whether it is residential building or whether it's a commercial building, we look into the ROI. How can we use that space for that client? How can we gain more, return on investment on that? How can we get the branding across? So this is very important for us to be successful in our own standards. That is to make them happy clients, and on time payment is what we are looking for, right? So we follow a procedure we follow a system in our process. So there is a core belief that we do no assumptions to be made when we are doing the brief, because you don't get right answer if your question is not properly drafted or framed. So we go through a process called compassionate inquiry and exploration, where we try to unspoken preferences and expectation of the client. So a lot of time, even personally, we might not be able to articulate with clarity the things we like, this, that, and so when we are trying to have a more exploration and inquiry methodology, then evolves, and even the client get the clarity on what they want. So for residential projects, we feel the clients are not very keen on a very long questionnaire, so we try to make it less formal but try to get information out of them, so the changes are less. Again, we are more sustainable, we are not losing time, less variation. It has a trickling effect in everything. So
Right.
when we are doing the brief, we combine this compassionate inquiry and exploration with scientific data and research.
Mhm.
So for us, it's combining the human element with the science, or so I think that combination is what makes us humans unique, right? So your space should reflect the same.
Absolutely. So, you are in a creative field, okay, which has technical requirements as well. So, how much of the concepts of intuition, visualization do you use in your projects?
We feel visualization helps to communicate, just not with the client, even the contractor, the subcontractor. So everybody is clear on what is expected out of them. So that is just not a tool for presentation, but communication, as well as to have a very seamless workflow. So we use basically 3D visualization. Unless until the client requests, we don't go for walkthrough and all, because see, once you see a 3D in all angles, you know how the space is looking at. Unless somebody wants to feel it more, it's done on specials. But otherwise, most of our projects, we have a construction document, we have a mood board which we discuss, and the initial layout and how the spaces should flow with each other. Then once that is kind of approved, then we go for the 3D visualization, where we actually put in the materials, the finish, the layering of materiality, the refinement, and the vocabulary we want to bring in. Once that is done, then we go into the construction aspect, like tendering and purchasing.
What about intuition? And how much of visualization do you use it in your personal life?
Yeah, visualization is something that comes quite naturally to me. I have to actually apply brings on my imagination, because execution and visualization has to be balanced. So
Yes.
for me, the real challenge is personally to balance it out, not to go too much into imagination. Yeah, I use a lot of it, and in my experience, once you visualize it, you can work towards it in a more productive way. You start believing it yourself, then things get aligned, right?
So amazing, Nima, talking to you about the concepts, about your thought process and designing, about your understanding of human emotions and connecting it with the kind of design element that you go ahead with. So this has been really, really insightful. At the same time, very, I would say, profound in many ways, because the concepts that you spoke about and the innovation that you spoke about, it is really, in today's day and world, I believe that this is so important to have a connect of human and technology, okay, and you are utilizing it in your design concept. So amazing talk. So Nima, leading multiple design firms, and it requires both creative and business acumen. How do you balance artistic expression with the practical aspects of running a successful in terms of your business?
I'm really glad that you asked this question, because this was the most challenging part of the whole journey. Because I started the business to do design. So I was not formally trained in business. I didn't know how to do a business plan, marketing, or how to engage with a legal consultant, IT consultant, auditors, hiring process. So these are things we have learned on the job. And I think, these are things you should be part of your education sector as well. But unfortunately, even in your professional colleges, these things are omitted, and then you have to really figure out in your real life. So but one thing that helped us is, like, as designers, we are always providing solutions, coming up with problem solving. So we kind of have this muscle to figure it out, and that's how we have kind of find our own ways to manage the business part, which is not our strong suit. Because in college or as a professional, we are strong in our technical part, we are very good with our concept development, but when it comes to the business side, we are just without any training, and we are just going and doing what we feel is the right thing. So I also got myself into few networking organization to understand the business aspects as well. So so BNI is one of the organization I was early associated with. So it helped me to gain more insight on the business world as such. But I also realized that the business of design is quite different, and the standards we apply in a conventional or traditional business doesn't apply in the business of design. Because if your only thing is profitability, then you make more profit if your billables are small for a project. But if you don't spend enough time on a project, you cannot come up with a unique solution for a specific project. It doesn't become unique, because what makes a project unique, it's the parameter, the constraint, what bring it all together, you have a new thing, right? So that requires time, it requires iteration. So it's a very trial and error and a very iterative process. So you have to do justice to both. Can't be a starving artist as well as you can't be like profit only kind of organization. Then what happens is that you are only doing this cookie cutter design solutions or the same repetitive designs, because your bottom line is to reduce your billables or stick to that minimum billables. You are not interested in providing unique solutions. So we were very clear from the beginning that's not how we want to operate. The whole point of starting the business was design, and then to dilute it doesn't make sense, right? So we have done a lot of trial and error to reach the sweet spot between the both. We are still refining, but I think I would like to know more and do research on the profitability and staying true to your services is something that it's a work in progress. And I think as designers, the advantage we have is the problem solving skill that we have. Like, I would like to share an example that happened with us is during the COVID time. Just COVID was hitting out. It was initially like only in China. Then we have a lot of vendors and suppliers in Italy, Spain and all. So we started getting calls like, we don't know how much it's going to delay. Italy got really affected. Then I realized that, and during that time, 90% of my design team was in India. So I thought, like, if something like this break out, we are a very populated place, how do you run the business? And then I started getting information from the IT field also. They are all trying for work at home options and exploring such options. So I said, I think I need to do this immediately. And we tried to arrange computers and ask everybody to take rotation and try out in the house. And when everybody's we did a trial, because earlier it was all network, right? All the computers are now you're all working individually. So I did this because if somebody gets sick, we don't want the entire office to be affected. So that was the idea that I tried it with. But the end of 1 week trial, India went on lockdown. So if I had not done this, I would have been out of business, because it's COVID, you can't recruit, it's total lockdown. So I think this intuitive mentality and the problem solving skill is something that we designers are inherently working on all the time, so which helps the business as well. But I think we are yet to learn. I mean, there are a lot of practices who are combining the profitability and the design part beautifully, but I think we need to work more on that.
Amazing. That's quite a vision, actually. Because of that vision, you could do what is required at that point of time. I believe all entrepreneurs have that intuition. Otherwise, they will not sustain. So amazing. Nima, just before we end, okay, I would like to ask you one advice that you want to give it aspiring architects or people who are transitioning from an architect to a interior design field. Like one key aspect which you think is a must in that.
The willingness to learn, that is the lifelong learning, to keep that curiosity alive. So that is very important. And if you are transitioning, ask yourself that what are the reasons that you are doing. It has to be for the right reasons. It has to come from within. Then only you will be happy. Because in between, I had a phase where I was trying to get the figures. Like when you get involved with business people, they all talk numbers. But I realized that just following numbers don't make me. If you feel hollow from within, I don't think anything is worth it. So once you ask the right question, like why are you making a transition or why are you joining? If you get the right answers and you have the willingness to learn, and whatever comes, you have to surrender to the result. Because a lot of time there are people who put in effort. A lot of time we may put in effort for something and it might not turn up. So we should have that, especially ladies, we take rejections very personally. Even I have worked on myself a lot to emotionally regulate that, rejections are not about your worth. It's about one thing happening working on a project, So for us, if you're a lady, you have to work on the emotional side. If you are a man, you have to be willing to learn and put that extra hours to do that shift. First, I would like to thank you for inviting me to your talk. And, there are a lot of things like when you ask for a talk, it's actually I gathered my thoughts. Then, we are relaunching our website. So actually, your talk, helped us to put things in a more consolidated manner. So I think you're doing an amazing job and wishing you all the best for many more.
Thank you. Wish you luck as well. And thank you for joining in. Take care.
Thank you. Bye. Take care.
You too.